college sports and specifically this effort to maybe save what can be saved of some of the college sports football season, in fact, all sports, to help us understand where we stand right now. Pete Thamel, Yahoo Sports reporter, is joining us. And when last we looked at this, the Big Ten had essentially canceled the 2020 sports season. I mean, is that accurate the way they said it? Because there's this push to maybe do some things a little bit later or some things a little bit earlier, right?
Well, Adam, the decision they made nearly 3 weeks ago was to postpone the 2020 season. So they'd canceled the fall portion of it and were going to attempt to play in either the winter or spring. And what started as spring ended up moving to January in the plan/hope of some of the coaches. And what was revealed on Friday was that there were discussions, and there's a lot of difference between coach discussions and presidential decisions. But there were discussions that perhaps the league could start playing as early as Thanksgiving weekend.
Dan, I think you wanted in on this.
Yeah, Pete, you look at how these sports have reacted, right? I'm a Mets fan, unfortunately, but Major League Baseball hasn't done particularly well with dealing with coronavirus. And you look at a sport for college, you look at the NFL, for instance. How do they manage to even keep their players safe? I mean, a field is a field, right? You can bubble the NBA because there's different courts that you can put into different conference areas and in hotels, but you can't do that with something like football or baseball. What are we just going to see huge outbreaks?
It's a good question, Daniel. I think that's something that the college administrators wake up every morning worried about. I would counter you on Major League Baseball a bit. It has been ugly, but I think the baseline for sports being played this year is that the games are actually played. I really think that's the bottom line when you go ahead and look at whether sports are successful or not. The quality and caliber of college football that we're going to see this year, and really the NFL we're going to see this year, is not going to be the quality and caliber of football we're used to. And when we look ahead to the football seasons that are upcoming, I do think in the college space, to answer your questions, there are going to be outbreaks. There have already been 3 games delayed. There's going to be more. Austin Peay played Central Arkansas on Saturday. Austin Peay's long snapper was in quarantine. So they sailed the ball 40 yards past the punter twice because that's the kind of personnel things that are going to have to happen. Now, where the colleges have to make these decisions, Dan, is how is the health and safety of the players really being impacted? And institutionally and presidentially, I think institutions have had more stomach for outbreaks, more stomach for delays than I thought they would. If you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have thought the first notion of sort of like a Miami Marlins season would have really made administrators queasy. But I think having seen what Major League Baseball went through, college administrators have been more inclined to kind of go for it.
Hey, Pete, we've got about 2 minutes left. And this morning we learned something that none of us expected, but that basketball coach John Thompson passed away. His family told us this. He was 78 years old. I was at Syracuse, by the way, in the mid-'80s, back when the big rivalry with Georgetown. What more can you tell us about the impact he had on not only college sports, but, sports in general?
Yeah, well, Adam, I really think when you look at the legacy of John Thompson, it's one of the most profound legacies in the history of college basketball. You're talking about someone who was just an instrumental figure in so many different fundamental building blocks of the sport as we know it. You mentioned Syracuse. I went to Syracuse too. John Thompson was the first Big East coach to win a national title, and he was just instrumental in that growing into the big monster brand it was in the 80s, 90s, and beyond. John Thompson was the first African-American coach to win a national title. And he's been an inspiration to generations of African-American coaches since then. He really turned Georgetown into a cultural touchstone in the 1980s. The starter jacket, the sneakers. Georgetown was like a vibe. It was a living, breathing, teeming thing. The intensity, the way they played, the style, the pressing on the court. John Thompson just had a profound impact in the style of college basketball that was played there and after.